My half-sister accused my father of being unreasonable in his deathbed. A few years ago, my family faced one of the toughest times imaginable when we lost our father to cancer. Before he married our mom, Dad had a life filled with incredible adventures. He was part of the crew for some famous rock bands known for their big hair and loud music. During his early 20s, he lived life on the road, traveling from city to city with these bands, and had his share of wild experiences. Dad often told stories from those days, filled with concerts, late-night parties, and endless travels. He had a sense of humor about it all, frequently making jokes about how chaotic his life was back then. Sometimes he'd laugh and say he wouldn't be shocked if we had a half-brother or half-sister out there somewhere. According to him, there were many things from those days that he simply couldn't remember. But beneath his laughter, there was a hint of worry. It seemed like the idea that he might have another child out there whom he never met or helped raise actually bothered him a lot more than he let on. Seeing this hidden concern, my siblings and I decided to do something about it. We thought that taking a DNA test might shed light on any unknown aspects of our dad's past. We didn't expect much, maybe discovering some distant relatives at most. For years, that's exactly what happened. Nothing beyond a few distant cousins. However, everything changed dramatically when Dad's health took a turn for the worse, and he had to enter hospice care. Around 6 months before he passed away, we received a notification from the DNA testing service. It was a match, but not with a distant cousin. This time it was a half-sister, and she was almost a decade older than me. This was a big deal. The timeline of her birth perfectly matched the period when our dad was touring incessantly with those rock bands. Before responding to her, we felt it was important to discuss it with Dad first, especially considering his frail condition. He was extremely weak and sick, but when we mentioned that we might have found his other daughter, the news hit him hard. He broke down crying, something we hadn't seen him do very often. Through his tears, he told us that this was exactly what he had always feared the most, having a child out there that he hadn't been there for, that he hadn't supported. He expressed a strong desire to talk to her as soon as he could. He wanted to make up for lost time, at least in whatever way he was capable of in the days he had left. When we connected with our newly discovered half-sister, things quickly took a turn for the worse. After sharing our dad's number and explaining his serious health condition, as well as the fact that he was unaware of her existence until recently, her response was far from understanding. Instead, she began to bombard him with phone calls, often filled with anger and accusations. She would scream questions at him, asking why he left her and her mother, why he never searched for her, and calling him irresponsible. We stood by, feeling helpless as we listened to these painful exchanges. We even urged him to hang up, but he refused. He believed that listening to her, absorbing her pain and anger, was the last thing he could offer her in his final days. After our dad passed away, the tension escalated when we informed her of his death. Her immediate reaction was to inquire about her inheritance. I was taken aback by her bluntness. His medical bills had depleted nearly all his savings, and after paying for his funeral, we were left with just $11,000. I explained to her that there was hardly anything left, and what little was left was meant to be split among my siblings and me. I also expressed to her how deeply hurt I was by the way she treated our father during his last days. I told her I couldn't forgive her for adding stress to his final moments, and I pointed out that it wasn't entirely his fault she grew up without him. Her mother also played a role in the situation. My mom and sisters think I'm being too harsh. They say I should try to understand how she feels about growing up without a father and suggest that I should just give her the remaining money, considering it isn't a large sum and her life hasn't been easy. However, despite their arguments, I find myself unable to move past her actions. Our dad appointed me to manage his estate, and I feel a strong responsibility to honor his last days, which were overshadowed by turmoil and regret due to those distressing calls. It's a tough position to be in, balancing fairness, grief, and unresolved family tensions.